This is the first in a series of videos on Introduction to Logs. And to start with, let's look at the idea of inverse operations. So first of all, let's think about what is the opposite of addition. Well, if you think about the opposite of addition, is simply subtraction. So we say that addition and subtraction are inverse operations. And the opposite of multiplication is division, because multiplication and division are inverse operations as well. We can see that pretty easily, because if we take 10, we divide it by 2, we get 5. But then if we take 5 again and we multiply by 2, we get 10. So we say dividing by 2 and multiply by 2 are inverse operations. So let's think about x squared. The opposite of x squared is simply the square root of x, and the opposite of x cubed is going to be the cube root of x. And the rule is that any operation followed by its inverse cancel each other out. And you just get back where you started. And we use that all the time in math, though we oftentimes don't explicitly state it. So now, in order to go on, what we need to do is we need to make very clear the difference between what x squared is and 2 to the x. So x squared means x times x, whereas 2 to the x means 2 times 2, a total of x times. So for example, let's do that again. Let's say x is equal to 7. Well, then x squared would be x times x, or 7 times 7, or 49. Where 2 to the x, when x is 7, would be 2 to the 7th is equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 2, which would be 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. And it's real important not to get confused between these two when you're doing logs. So let's look at the difference between x to the 7th and 7 to the x. Well, x to the 7th is equal to x times x times x times x times x times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Where 7 to the x means 7 times 7 times 7 for a total of x times. Okay? So be very careful in the difference between these two. Now let's think of those two in the terms of opposites. So the opposite of x squared is the square root of x. Pick any number. Let's say x is equal to 4. 4 squared is 16, and the square root of 16 is equal to x. Is equal to 4. So when you have the square root of x squared, you get x. X cubed, the opposite of x cubed, would be the cube root of x. So 2 to the 3rd is 8. 2 times 2 times 2, that's 8. So the cube root of 8, we say, is 2. So now let's think about what is the opposite of x squared. What is the opposite of 2 to the x? The opposite of 2 to the x is going to be log base 2 of x. And that's the key. The key fact is the opposite of an exponent is a log. So we can take any one we want to. We can say the opposite of 5 raised to the x is log base 5 of x. So we know the log base 5 of 5 to the x, since these are opposites, they have to cancel out, and you get back to x. And that's the key fact that we're going to focus on. let's get started with some simple examples. Okay? So what I want you to do now is I want you to try these examples here without a calculator. And then after you try those, then let's try these right here. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to pause now, work out these problems, and when you're finished, turn back the video back on. Now let's look at the answers and check and see if you got these right. Well, 2 squared is 4, 2 to the third is 8, 2 to the fourth is going to be 16, and 2 to the fifth is 32. 3 squared is 9, 3 third is 27, 3 to the fourth is 81. If you think of that, you can do that with your fingers. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 9 is 81. 4 squared is 16, 4 to the third is 64. 5 squared is 25, 5 to the third is 125, 5 to the fourth is 625. So before we go on, what I'm going to want you to do is memorize any of these that you don't have already memorized. And then let's look at 2's. Well, anytime you have 2 to power, it's really easy. You can just do it on your fingers because you double each time. So 2 to the 6 would be 2, 4, 8, 16. 32, 64. So 2 to the 6th is 64. 2 to the 7th would be twice that, 128. 2 to the 9th, let's see, that's 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and 512. If you can't quite do that in your head, that's all right. Now 10 squared, 10 to the 5th, 10 to the 6th, and then 10 to the 12th. Well, 10s are actually really easy. 10 squared is 100. That's 10 times 10. If you notice that 10 squared has 1 with 2 zeros. 10 to the 5th is 1 with 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 100,000. 10 to the 6th is a million, or 1 with 6 zeros. And 10 to the 12th has 12 zeros. See if I did that right. 3, 6, 9, 12. And that's 1 million, 1 billion, 1 trillion. That's the first video on the first part of Intro to Logs. And what we're going to do is, since logs are really the opposite of these, we're going to use these. So we're going to stop now and you can go on to the second video.